Okay, so everybody's probably wondering what's going on with 508, and not much, to be honest with you. But I do have some news here I'm going to tell you about here in just a second. So, let's get started. First off, you've seen this slide before. This is who I am. This is my phone number. Feel free to call me if you have questions. If you need something else, send me an email. I do answer the webmaster box a lot of times, in fact, most of the time. So if you send it there, I'll see it too, probably. Okay, let's jump into this. The news that I have for you today is the Department of Justice has decided to delay implementing the WCAG 2.0 guidelines, AA compliance, into 508. They say because they want to allow time for agencies to prepare. When I saw this, I thought, what? We're ready, right? Everybody's ready, right? We've been doing 1.0 for years. So then it dawned on me that they're talking about the federal agencies who've only had to do 508 up to this point. So they're way behind. California got really smart and jumped way ahead. When we were back in 2006, we jumped way ahead and went to 1.0. So now we're at 2.0, which I told you last time I was up here a year ago. There's not any difference, really. There's a few little differences, but they backed off of some things, and I'm going to get to that in a second. So the one thing you do have to remember is while we are still required to meet 508, and 508 is not that much right now, California jumped ahead, went to 1.0, WCAG 1.0. In 2006, that was a suggested standard. It was not a law. It still is not a law. But the courts are now enforcing WCAG 2.0. I believe there was actually, I don't have them with me today, there was a court case, there's been 3 court cases I've got back at my office. One of them was against Stanford. They required Stanford to move to WCAG 2.0. So the courts are already enforcing this even though the DOJ has not moved it into the 508 guidelines yet. They're talking about doing it in 2018. That's 2 years from now. So, but it gives us time to prepare. Of course, we're already ready because we're doing 1.0. So let's go on. What's the difference between 2.0 and 1.0? Well, they say WCAG 2.0 is more precisely testable. Doesn't look any more testable to me, just to be honest with you. WCAG 1.0 is organized around guidelines. We've all seen those checkpoints that we have to go through to make sure everything's right. WCAG 2.0 is organized around 4 principles of web accessibility: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Each principle, of course, has guidelines, and each guideline has testable success criteria. So they have ways that you can test it, but to be honest with you, it's not much different from 1.0. So here's an example of the difference between 1.0 and 2.0. 1.0 talked about making sure you provide the text alternatives to your images and that kind of stuff. We even had to put text alternatives on our spacer GIFs. The new 1.0 or the new 2.0 guidelines talks about the non-text content. Still has to have alternative text on it, but there are some exceptions to the rule. Controls, inputs, submit buttons. You don't have to do that because they're all labeled submit buttons. So they say you don't have to put an alt text on those. Time-based media, they say you don't have to put an alt tag on it that tells what it, well, let's see, how do I describe that? What it all is, but they do want you to put an alt description on it describing what you're doing. I mean, we're talking about, some kind of flash media presentation. Tell them what it's about. It's about web accessibility, right? So that's what this presentation is about. They talk about there's an exception for tests. If you're giving somebody a colorblind test, you can't tell them what the color is. They're supposed to tell you what the color is. So you can't put an alt tag on it. Sensory is like a flute solo, had some other things down here. Abstract art. How do you describe an abstract art? So you don't really have to put an alt tag on it. CAPTCHA, we all know about that, hopefully. CAPTCHAs are not accessible. They've got some things out there now that are giving you audio cues as to what the CAPTCHA is. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I've been telling people for years, don't do it that way. Put a question out there that says, which one of these is not an auto manufacturer, GM, Ford, Home Depot, or Chevrolet? And then you can put a series of questions together, maybe 7 to 10 questions, and randomly pick one of those questions. That way you can find out if you're being spidered by a robot. And then not because they can't give you the right answer because the question's different every time. The other thing is decorations formatting. There's that spacer GIF that we talked about. We don't have to put alt tags on that anymore. If you've got a big curly line on your website in the background, you don't have to put an alt tag on it. So that's a little bit of difference from 1.0 and 2.0. What do we have to watch out for? So server-side image maps. This is where you're trying to draw an area on, like the California map, you're trying to draw a circle around, or you're trying to draw the outline of a county. They're going to have to be done by server-side. So you got to make sure you provide alternate text for those somewhere else on the page so that people don't get confused. So you're going to have to put your county list somewhere else on the page so that you don't cause an issue when they're trying to get around this server-side image map. So the color contrasts on your text against your background have also changed. WCAG 1.0 was 5:1. It didn't matter what size the font was, didn't matter if it was bold, it's supposed to be 5:1. Now they've backed off. Wow. 4.5:1. Unless it's large text or a bold font above 14 points, then you can actually go down to 3:1. Let's see. Oh, again, we're talking about the decorations down here. You don't have to put alt tags on those things that aren't visible to people. Logos. We don't have to worry about contrast on our logos anymore. For years, we had to worry about that. We don't have to worry about that anymore. If your contrast isn't perfect on your logos, don't worry about it. Put an alt tag on it. It'll be fine. Another thing that we have to watch out for, and I'm seeing this a lot, is people are not putting in tags on their tags. The image tag has a built-in in tag on it. It's the space / at the end of it. If you're using breaks, VRs. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a definition between logos and just images and text?
They talk about logos being your entities, be it an agency or a department, standard logo that you use all the time. If you're talking about an image with a text, you still need to put an alt tag on it, and it needs to have the right contrast so that people can understand what it is. If it's a standard logo, they see it all the time. But if it's a text with if it's an image with text in it, that's something they're going to see once in a while, and they're not going to see it that often. Michael, there's a question from the internet. I'm sorry?
Someone's asking what an alt tag is.
What is an alt tag? An alt tag is, if you're, let's see, how do I put this? It's actually not a tag, it's actually an attribute. It's in the image tag, and it describes what the image is. This is well, actually I don't have it here. I was thinking it was up right down there. Alt tag needs to describe what the image is. If you're showing them a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge, you need to tell them this is a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. I don't think you have to put the picture, but you say this is the Golden Gate Bridge. It's actually an attribute. It's not a tag. I call it a tag all the time. I don't know why I do that, but I do. I need my Coke. Hang on here. So, to get to the end one here, the purpose of each link has to be determined by the link tag. I'm seeing a lot of people use more. You'll put a paragraph on the front page. It's about some person, and you just put more at the end of it. People with screen readers bounce from link to link to link to link to link. They don't really read the paragraphs. They're looking for certain things, and they will bounce through the links until they find what they're looking for. So if you put more and make it a link, their first question is going to be more what? So you have to tell them more information about Webmaster User Group. So make sure you put some kind of text in there that tells them what this link is going to take them to. They need to be unique. You can't use the same one over and over and over. So make them unique. Okay, so what do we not have to watch out for? Well, let's talk about client-side image maps. These are circles, squares that you can pull off of the user's computer and use on an image map. You can do those. You don't have to worry too much about the alt text because they're going to know what it is. It's going to tell them it's a circle, tell them it's a square. Make sure you provide summaries or make sure you no longer have to provide summaries for tables. We used to have to describe tables. We have a table on our website that is a table of counties. They're in alphabetical order. There's, 52? Anybody remember? Anyway, 58. So we had to tell them in a description before the table, and it was a hidden description so that most people, you and I can see, didn't have to see it, but somebody who's using a screen reader, it automatically reads this description. Told them this is a list of counties in alphabetical order. And then the last two cells are empty. So we had to tell them that. Now you don't have to tell them that. You no longer have to put those descriptions on there. They can figure it out now. The user agents are helping them figure it out. There's a table with 60 cells. You know, it doesn't really tell them what is in these cells, but they get an idea that the table is 60 cells. There's, 10 by 6 columns, whatever. So the next thing is Flash is now allowed. However, they have to be very slow. Don't make them flash fast. You're going to cause somebody to have a seizure. And so they say no more than 3 times in a second, which is actually pretty fast when you think about it. And they have to be able to stop this thing. Pause it, stop it, end it, something. So put a pause tag or an end tag on the end of this flash or beside this flash or some way for them to turn this thing off because it'll drive them crazy. I always tell people make it rotate 3 times and then stop it automatically. That way they don't even have to worry about stopping it. It's going to stop. But when you do it, make sure that the place that it stops is the one page you want it to stop on, because I see that a lot of times people will stop it and it'll be on a blank page or a blank graphic and you get 0 after that. So you can't see it. But if you want it to look good, make sure you stop it on something that you want it to stop on. Scrolling content's now allowed. You can make something scroll across your page. Again, you got to make sure you can stop it, turn it off, make it stop after 3 runs, whatever. Some way to make it stop. Okay, I was asked last time I was here about keyboard traps. How do I do a keyboard trap? My first question to them was, why would you want to do one? They're not accessible in any way, but they asked the question, so I thought I would come up with an example here. This is a JavaScript. What happens is when you go down the page and you hit this certain link, it kicks off this, it calls this JavaScript. And this JavaScript will open up a new browser window, which in and of itself is not accessible, but we'll ignore that part for right now. If they get stuck in this thing, because they'll close that window and it goes back to the link, and as soon as they key down again, it sets that page off again. So they're stuck in this loop, and they can't get to the rest of the content on the page. So don't do this. This is not a good thing. I shouldn't even have put it up there, but somebody asked me to show them what one was, so here's one. You can also do it in Flash and iOS. You can do the same thing. So don't do keyboard traps. That's not good. So that's the end of this. There is a period of time here where you guys can ask me questions before you do. I was asked a question yesterday I thought I would address here. Somebody asked me about those vertical bars that we have to put with spaces on either side of them in between adjacent links. You'll see this a lot at the bottom of state pages. I know our pages got them. This was meant to help people distinguish between one link and the other. Well, WCAG 2.0 says you no longer have to do this because user agents are now able to distinguish between the two links. But they also throw in a little but. If your audience, which I'm sure everybody here who has an external site is going to have people in their audience that have cognitive disabilities, the ability to understand what's going on, the ability to learn, to retain their knowledge. They say if you're going to have an audience with people with cognitive disabilities coming to your website, this will help. It's not a requirement, but it's a suggestion to keep putting those vertical bars in there. So you're not going to be banged on if you don't put it there. So if you don't put it there, don't worry about it too much. If somebody pops up and says, I wish you did, then maybe you go back and do it. But you no longer have to do this. Now that starts in 2018. Until then, leave them on your website. So if there's any more questions, Michael, got anything off the internet? What's the policy on blank targets? Blank targets. I'm not sure what.
Opening in a new window. Underscore blank on it.
Oh, instead of, well, the rule before and in WCAG was if you're going to open a new window, you need to inform the user before you do this. So in other words, your link needs to say a link to a PDF, this whatever PDF document, this opens a new window. WCAG 2.0, I think, is still the same way. You need to notify them. I mean, you go back to that example where we talked about the keyboard trap. One of the things in there was it opens a new window, and that in and of itself is not accessible. So 2.0 is going to be the same way. If you're going to open a new window, you need to tell them. Otherwise, they wind up with 40 open windows, and they can't figure out why their computer's moving so slow. So make sure you tell them you're going to open a new window. Yes?
So I have two questions, but going off of that one right there,
Okay.
Is the recommendation then when you have a PDF that you just open it, that's on your site, you just open it?
So the question is, do I open the PDF in the same window, and is that the recommendation? Yeah, that's the best way to do it. I know some people don't, but mostly what they're talking about when they talk about don't open a new window is don't open a new browser. If you open a PDF in Adobe PDF, I think you're probably okay because they're going to understand that they opened Adobe PDF when they click on a PDF. That said, if you could put it in the same browser window, that would probably be the best way to go. And you said you had a second question?
I did have a second question. So regarding the space or images not using an alt tag, when we test it with the WUG 2.0, it does come up as an error saying it still needs like the quotation marks to run in there.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. Yeah, okay, so the question was, when we put in spacer GIFs, it still doesn't pass the WCAG 2.0 guidelines. And putting in a blank alt tag with just the quotation marks with the space in between is the way to get around that. You don't have to put anything there because there's nothing for them to understand. It's just a blank space. So when there's a blank space, they're going to realize it's just a spacer GIF. And,
You don't need it.
well, according to what WCAG 2.0 says, no, you don't have to put it there. But in order to get around these checkers, I guess is the best way, accessibility checkers is the best way to call them. If you put one in there that's blank, with just the quotation marks in the space in between.
So to piggyback on the testing issue, is there any initiatives or movements that you're aware of in the state that provides a better set of resources and tools and recommended standards that departments can adopt for testing and compliance checking? Because it's kind of, everybody kind of does their own thing.
So the question was, is there any recommendations or standards or initiatives coming out about how to test the accessibility on the website.
Websites, web applications, PDF files?
Yeah, these accessibility testers are, the best way to describe them is you can use them as a tool, but don't depend on them. You and I both know, because you were on the ILUCA with that back in 2006. These testers will test about 26% of the accessibility. The other 74%, you have to go in and look at. So is it worth wasting the time to do 26% when you know you got to go back and look at the rest of it by site? It depends on whether you're testing a lot of pages. If you're testing a lot of pages, using one of these checkers, it helps. It'll get you through it faster, but you still have to go back and check the other 74%. So, and they're still the same. They said that they made the WCAG more easily testable. It really didn't change much, so I don't know how they could say that, but that's the comment that they made. And we'll see, maybe some other checkers will come out that are doing a better job than these that we currently have. But things like, well, the old Bobby's not around anymore, but the old Bobby and Cynthia says and Wave, yeah, they'll only check about 26%, 27% of the rest of it you have to check yourself. It's not going to tell you whether an alt tag describes the image as being an image of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's going to tell you, yeah, there's an alt tag there. I'm not going to tell you what it is, though. So you have to go look and make sure that it's right. I get a lot of them a lot of times that are just file names. And it's like, nobody's going to understand that. So you have to go in and interchange it. Make it descriptive, as if you were talking to somebody on the phone trying to describe what is this picture? It's a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a suggestion for screen readers for that?
We use JAWS and Window Eyes. Those are the two big ones. There are a lot of little ones out there, and a lot of people use them. But the two biggest ones in the market today that have the biggest market share is JAWS and Window Eyes. JAWS is done by, I can't remember the name of that company. Anyway, just type in JAWS on Google and then it'll pop up. Those are the two big ones in the market right now. Michael, got a question off the internet.
Visually, if you're screen link, open in new window, part of it.
Okay, I got to walk over here, Michael. I'm getting old, my hearing is going. Well, very good. Okay, the question was, if visually impaired screen readers skip from link to link, does opens a new window need to be part of the text? Yes. If it opens a new window, yes, it does. And the screen readers don't naturally skip from link to link, just to be clear. But that's the way a lot of users use them. That's what we've learned in the past is a lot of users, if they're looking for something, they know what they're looking for, they will start jumping from link to link to find what they want. But yes, if it opens a new window, you need to tell them it's going to open a new window when you click this link, or when you select this link.
And you tell them in an attribute of some sort?
No, it actually has to be part of the text because I guess you could put, a lot of screen readers don't read the title attribute, but is there something else you could put on there? It was an image.
We use small graphics so that there's
Oh, you use an image on links. If they're going to open a new window, you put a little graphic on there, and then you put an alt tag on it that says this opens a new window.
So then visually, people are not learning.
That's kind of nice. Use like a spacer gif. Nothing there.
Browser, looks like, two browser on the pretty
Little icon. Yeah. You can even do it with a spacer gif. Like we were talking about earlier, we were going to put nothing in the spacer gif anyway, so you might as well just put in there this opens a new browser window. Make sure you put it before the link though, instead of after the link, because they won't see it as after the link. Yes.
There is a vendor that is currently contracted with the state to help with accessibility, because for my department, we have a ton of pages, and myself, one person that manages all of them. So making sure that every single page meets the accessibility standards is a full-time job in itself.
So you're looking for somebody to help you, with the accessibility, checking it, making sure things are right. And I know where you're at, because I did that for years. I was the only one. And, that's why I had to intentionally build in accessibility from the beginning. I had to be thinking of that constantly. Now we have a team, which is nice. But,
We have a team, we have a person of one.
right, one person,
Over 1,000 pages
yeah,
in all of the department sites.
very daunting.
Do you know of any?
We actually,
Any other contractors?
actually, there's a couple things I want to tell you. Number one, last time I was here, I talked about we're going to create a class, an accessibility class. Now, any of you that were here, I don't know, maybe went through this class in 2006 that we did, and I know this is a week-long class, and it's 8 hours a day. Or, well, maybe not 8 hours, it was more like 6 or 7 hours. We gave people a break at the end of the day and whatnot. It's a daunting class, it's a week long, and I mentioned we were going to build one. Michael knows we've had some budgetary issues with this. We're still talking about doing it. It's not being worked on at the moment, but hopefully in the near future it's going to be worked on. The other thing I wanted to say to you is we actually have a unit at the Department of Rehabilitation. If you're a state agency, they will help you with accessibility. I don't have his phone number, but his name is Jake Johnson. Not related to me. But his name is Jake Johnson, and he runs a unit at the Department of Rehabilitation. And they will go and help you and check your site. They've been through physical, they've been working on physical. Talk about something that's big. They've been working on physical, working on trying to make that sure that's accessible. Michael's got another one back there, so I'm going to walk back there. Oh, JAWS and window eyes. WINDOWYE. Yes. Almost forgot the S. Freedom Scientific. Freedom Scientific does JAWS. Michael.
If those captions are not available in video or
Technically, no. And the question was, if captions are not available, is the transcript sufficient? The way the web accessibility guidelines talk about the text part of a video is supposed to be timed to the video. In other words, if someone is speaking, the text is supposed to come across at relatively the same time. So if you're talking about a transcript, it's not going to be based on the video. It's not going to be time-based with the video. So it's supposed to be captioned. Transcripts are nice to have in addition to the captioning, but there should be a captioning there, and it should be based on the video as they go through the video. I don't know if that explains it right, but that's the best I can come up with right now. I think this.
Do you have a department that has, non-renegade, I guess you'd say, and our divisions have decided they maintain their content and then we can't tell them what to do on accessibility? Where do we go from there?
When it comes to, I don't say this, who's going to get in trouble? It's going to be your director. It has to stand up in front of the judge and explain why this site's not accessible. So those people that are being renegade and building their own website and saying, you can't tell us what to do, they're going to be held accountable by the director if the director is lined up in front of the judge. So that's all you can do is warn the director that these people are doing this and it's not accessible and you're going to be held responsible for it. You could be held responsible for it at some point.
And if you have a management structure that says they've reviewed it and you're not required to do that, what documentation do we have to them?
At the moment, all you have is 508, Rehabilitation Act, Section 508. That's the only thing we got right now. That's the legal requirement, and it's not very big. There's not very much to it. It does say I put all types of things, stuff like that. I've got it, the old version of it over here if you want to see it. But it doesn't, it's not very extensive. And that's why they delayed the new 508 guidelines, the WCAG 2.0, double A compliance. That's why they delayed it 2 years with the federal government. And all of its agencies and entities have only been required to do 508. So they're giving them 2 years to get ready. They have to be compliant when this thing gets put in the Rehabilitation Act, Section 508. They have to be compliant already. So they've got a job cut out for them. In the next 2 years, they're going to have to make their stuff accessible. And as soon as it does go, that department that you're talking about in Renegade has to have theirs legally done and up to Section 508 guidelines, the WCAG 2.0 guidelines. So while right now, all they have to do is meet 508, in 2 years, they have to meet WCAG 2.0. And if they don't, then they can be held legally responsible for it. And like I told you before, the courts are already enforcing WCAG 2.0. It is the standard. So, don't hold your breath, but just coming at you right now. Anything else?
The videos, need to be captioned. What about live webinar, WebEx?
Yeah, live webinars, do you have to caption them? Yes. Yeah. If your audience, if it's an internal webinar, and you know your audience, and you know nobody in there is going to be hearing impaired, you can probably not do it. But you better know for sure that they're not going to be anybody in there that's hearing impaired. If you're doing an external webinar, you have no clue who's going to be into this, who's going to be watching it, and that's captioning.
It means that this is, the accessibility issues are embedded in our pages we don't know about, whatever. And this has gone on for years. Isn't there been any initiative to create some kind of standard method that everybody has in the page if there's a problem? Because people are going to find our 88, right?
Well,
that they could invoke some way, basically taking immediately to the contact form with the page in it and just so they can tell us.
So the question is, should we put a comment form maybe?
What I'm saying is, has there been an approach community-wide, in other words, nationwide, or whatever, of anybody saying there should be a standard communication location?
Should there be a standard communication if a page is not accessible so that someone who may need that accessibility can let somebody know that it's not accessible?
Yeah.
Whoever discovers it. I agree. I mean, I don't know of any right now, but that's a great idea, and I would say that might be the way to do it. If you find an accessibility issue, click select this link. Am I running over my time? Or is David like still missing?
Oh, everyone's here, but
Just throw something at me when you're ready for me to get down. But yeah, that's a great idea. I would say, if you want to put some kind of form out there. Now, on the other side of that, we're about to implement a content management system in our department. And we've gone way out of our way to make sure this template setups are accessible. Are we able to control what other people put on the page? No, we're not going to be able to control it. However, our job is moving from actually maintaining the content to constantly reviewing this content. If we find something inaccessible, it comes down immediately. I mean, that's basically who we are. Yes, other departments, you don't have as much of an immediate necessity to fix it. You can use it up until you get it fixed, but you should get it fixed fast. In our case, because of who we are, we got to get it done fast. Because somebody's going to scream at it. But yeah, that's a great idea. I would say, if somebody finds an accessibility issue on the page, having a comment form for them to notify the webmaster that there is an issue on this page, that would be a great idea. But I don't really think about anybody doing that right now. Yes, ma'am.
On that issue, let's talk about the new accessibility manual. Manual put up on accessibility website. That would be a great place to do.
Yeah, would. Yeah, putting that comment form on the accessibility page that we're all now required to do, that would be a great place to put it.
And another comment on some discussion would be, keep referring to section 508.
Yes.
The California Government Code Section 111.
11135.
Is where California implements 508.
Correct.
So for your California managers, talking Government Code Section 11135
Correct.
is the authority to cite.
Yes. Yeah, technically, the Rehabilitation Act, Section 508 is a federal mandate, but in California Government Code 11135, the state of California has implemented 508. And that's saying that we will abide by the standards of Section 508. So as soon as these standards change for 508, 11135 kicks in again. Michael's on the internet.
Is there an online forum or newsletter that you want?
Is there a DOR forum or newsletter that would help maintain accessibility, I'm guessing? And the answer to the question is no. Should there be committee? That's a good idea. Well, we have a newsletter. The Department of Rehabilitation has a newsletter, but it doesn't deal with accessibility on websites. So it's more about the department, what we do, how we help individuals with disabilities. You know, they can get answers to questions about how do I apply for services, that kind of stuff. But as far as web accessibility, no, there's not really anything in the newsletter about that. Probably never will be. But that's a good idea. Maybe we should create one for webmasters. Hi, go ahead.
Hi, we have a CMS that we've been using over time,
I'm
and
just curious what you're doing.
we use HomeSpot.
Okay.
Okay. What worries about it, but it's okay. We have a group that got created.
Common spot for those ones.
Yeah, people think HomeSpot. They got creative on it, and all of their page links to the quick link strap on the side of their page. And I'm standing alone in saying that's not accessible because in order to find those, if I'm on a accessibility device or on a phone, I have to go all the way to the bottom of the page and keep tabbing through all the other links on that quick link before I find their link. How does that fit into accessibility standards? Is that, or do we talk about that?
Okay, the question she's asking is she's got one unit that has created all of their links on the right side of their page, which when you go to like a mobile device, it puts it down at the bottom. So in order for them to get to those links, you have to page through the whole page in order to get to it. Is that an accessibility issue? Not really. It's not user-friendly, I'll say that. Navigation should be at the top, and there should be a way to skip the navigation. Unfortunately, this navigation is at the bottom, which is kind of a
Well,
not a very user-friendly place to put it.
It basically serves in my mind to work on all of their pages.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that. It's you need a usability expert. Accessibility has a lot to do with usability, but it's not the end of usability. Usability goes further than that. And that sounds like a usability issue, and you need a usability expert, because that's not really user-friendly. There are a few usability experts around in the state of California, if you guys don't know.
What's the analysis we already?
We went with Orchard. And the reason we went with Orchard is because we were looking for a CMS that was accessible. And that's tough. By the way, on the previous question, we took that control with them. They cannot touch that right side. If they want to get into that right side, then they come to us.
Yeah, that's what we did.
So you want to put something on the right side in the navigation? Well, we got to come from it.
Yeah, they talked to somebody.
Somebody want to get away with it?
Yeah.
Okay, so, Orchard, yeah, we're using Orchard. I'm sorry?
Orchard or
Orchard. As in an apple orchard. Or peach orchard, or... No, Michael's still on me, yeah. Okay, anybody got any real quick one real at the end? Michael, I'm going to let you have it back. Thank you, sir.